Hello and good morning, Lancaster. It's Wednesday, week 7, and we're back with more news and more entertainment.
Yes, hello. As you may have noticed, the nominations for next year's full-time officers have closed and campaigns have begun.
This week, we're joined by Colin Mang, Chair of Union Council, to discuss the upcoming LUSU elections, and we'll be discussing the news with Henry Saker-Clark.
Make sure you stay tuned for Good Morning Lancaster.
Welcome back, I'm Jessica Beard.
And I'm Chris Osborne. Excitement is building on campus as campaigns have begun for the next year's full-time officer positions. There are 6 full-time paid positions up for grabs: LUSU President, VP Union Development, VP Welfare and Community, VP Activities, VP Education and VP Campaigns and Communications.
Now, we decided to go out and find out just how interested people really are about these elections. Here's Anna Wang with questions on the spine.
Hello, and welcome to Questions on the Spine. Okay, so firstly, will you be voting in the LUSU elections?
Yes.
Yes. Indeed we will. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, will be, yeah.
Yes, I will.
Probably not. I don't know, not sure.
I certainly will. Certainly will be.
Probably not, to be honest.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not, no.
Of course I will be, but it's really important that students make their voice heard.
Maybe, I'm not sure.
Probably not, no.
Yes, I will be.
Next question is, if a jogger is moving at the speed of sound, can he hear his iPod?
No, it's like a few seconds behind him, isn't it? Like, his past self is having a chat with his iPod while he's
Surely
running
not.
along.
Surely the iPod's going at the speed of sound as well. So it doesn't matter. If it's contained within the speed of sound.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't know how physics works.
No idea.
I don't know.
No.
I would assume so, yes, since the speakers are also moving at the speed of sound. So relatively, they'd still be vibrating faster than he's moving.
Yes.
No.
If he's got his earphones in, then hopefully, yeah.
Jogger's running at the speed of... yeah, because it's going along at the same speed as him.
That's what I think.
I don't know.
I have no idea.
Yes. Yes, due to Einstein's theory of relativity, the earphones will actually be going at the same speed as the jogger. Therefore, in relative to the jogger, they won't be moving. Hence, the sound the jogger will be able to hear the earphones.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, debate.
I think you can. If he's running at speed. Yeah.
Turn at the speed of sound. He won't
Yeah, he would. Because
And also, he'd probably be dead.
you get
Running at the speed of sound.
no, because you run at the speed of sound. Like you get planes flying at the speed of sound, and they talk to each other when they're flying in the cockpit. So it'd be fine.
Possibly.
Yeah. No, it would. Yeah. You're thinking about speed of light.
Speed. Oh, okay. If he's running at the speed of sound, yes, I would say so.
Thank you very much for joining us for Questions on the Spine.
And that was Questions on the Spine with Anna Wang. Now it's time for this week's news. This week has seen the first week of campaigns for this year's LUSU full-time officer elections. The elections will see the 6 LUSU officer positions being decided when voting starts next week, with polls open from 10 a.m. on Wednesday, March the 4th to 4 p.m. on Friday the 6th of March. As usual, the positions up for grabs are president and 5 vice president positions, which are union development, welfare and community, campaigns and communications, activities and education. Hustings for the elections will take place at Barker House Farm, Cartmel Bar at 11 a.m. on Sunday, the 1st of March, giving the students the opportunity to grill the nominated candidates. Results will be announced shortly after the polls close on Friday, the 6th of March. We'll be covering the hustings and results live here on LA1 TV.
One of Lancaster's leading student accommodation providers, City Block, have announced plans to expand, providing brand new student accommodation offering 70 ensuite bedrooms and 10 private studios. The site will be located on Penny Street, replacing the Squires Pool and Sports Bar. The site, which has been in need of desperate regeneration for many years, according to City Block, will be transformed into modern, vibrant living spaces for students, providing additional choice for the student population with purpose-built, well-managed and good value student accommodation. Suzanne Parker, brand and marketing manager of City Block, has said that rents have not yet been decided as the proposal is only at the stage of going through planning. Figures have recently been released showing that Lancaster students are paying on average 19% more than non-students for rented accommodation, raising questions over the availability of affordable accommodation on and off campus.
Ellie Latif, a second-year biomedical science student, featured on a new BBC programme called Countryside 999 on the 17th of February when she and her boyfriend Daniel Thomas were involved in a serious car crash last year. She suffered several injuries when their car's wheels locked up and collided with a lorry on the way back to her home in Stockton in Yorkshire on April the 25th last year. Ellie and Daniel had to wait an hour after the crash for the emergency services, then another hour for the firefighters to cut them out of the car. Ellie suffered serious injuries, including bruised lungs, a shattered and dislocated elbow, broken ribs and a broken femur. Speaking to Scan, she was very grateful to the air ambulance, saying that she couldn't have done without them. She has even more respect for them as they don't get any funding from the government, but from the general public.
Last week saw the Feminist Society host Consent Week on campus after a successful campaign this time last year. The aim of the campaign was to get more people talking about consent and to debunk myths surrounding consent and rape. This year, LUSU became a pilot union for the Heart Consent campaign. Therefore, throughout the week, the Feminist Society organised workshops which aim to provide a forum to explore and, among other things, what constitutes consent, respecting people's choices and the myths perpetuated about consent. One key part of the campaign was their attempt to get groups involved, getting sports teams and societies to take part in consent workshops.
Now, in other news, a South Carolina college apologised on Monday after a faculty member handed out M&Ms in prescription drug bottles to little kids at a fun run over the weekend, calling them Happy Pills. While we know this professor meant the candy to serve as a treat, the method of distribution may have confused preschool children whose parents have taught them not to take pills from pharmaceutical bottles. Georgetown Technical College in East Conway near Myrtle Beach said in a statement, "We regret further that professors and administrators are human and, although eager to share information about growing careers, sometimes make mistakes. This particular mistake will not occur again." The faculty member, who wasn't identified, handed out the standard issue prescription pill bottles to promote her medical technology program. The labels prescribed the Happy Pills to a great kid, instructing patients to take one M&M every 2 to 4 hours.
We are now joined by Henry Saker-Clark, Scan News Editor. Hello, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Now, going back to the all-important FTO elections, this year we've got a lot of nominees, more than last year, I think. Are students more engaged, would you say?
Possibly, yeah. I think the fact there have been so many nominees does mean that people do want to stand in the union and do want to get their voice heard. But then you could also argue that because they want their voice heard, it possibly means they're not quite happy with what's happening in the union at the moment. There are a lot of people, however, that we have seen before who are involved in the union and different aspects of JCRs and things like that, so they know what's happening and they have an understanding and they really want to get involved and get behind some major issues which the union should tackle in their opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see so many. Could it be because maybe they see so many problems within the union?
Possibly. I think there are definitely, speaking to quite a few people, there are real issues that they think the union haven't necessarily done or things the union are failing with and want to improve. I think most of them, though, it's looking at the small things and trying to make sure they can improve them and build a stronger union rather than taking on massive issues head first. But I definitely think there is room for improvement and people really want to see that happen.
Do you think the performance of this year's full-time officer team has affected the candidates this year, and has it inspired people to run, seeing whether these people have managed to fulfil their manifesto promises? And
yeah, I think so. I think definitely being able to, like, we've had quite the union's been quite willing to communicate with people, and a lot of these people have been people who sort of the nominees are people who in their roles have had to communicate a lot with the current Lucy FTO team. So I think they've probably been almost inspired to do it from the fact they've seen what they've been doing and they thought, oh, I could do a job like that, and I think, you know, what they've been doing is something I want to carry on. Or, as has been said before, they've seen what they've been doing and been like, okay, that's all right, but I'd do it differently, and I think the way I do it would possibly improve the union. So I think either way it doesn't necessarily matter, but I do definitely think people have been having a look at the way the current union's been acting and trying to think about, you know, what can I do, how can I improve it.
Now, there have been a lot of nominees, as we were just saying, but more than half of them are white male. I think it was 60%, wasn't it? Could Lucy be doing more regarding diversity?
Yeah, I do think so. I think it's an issue that possibly hasn't been one of the main ones on their minds, although it's something that is definitely going to sort of come to fruition at some point, I think. Like, for example, a lot of the welfare campaigns at the moment have been more about things like sexism and mental health and things like that, and have been less so sort of specifically aimed at ideas of diversity and things like that. I do think anyway we do have a relatively sort of predominantly white university population and things like that, and so I think you're never going to get a huge diverse range of people doing it, but considering the amount of international students we have here, there aren't particularly many international nominees and things like that. So you definitely sort of hope to get some diversity, and often that almost makes it more interesting. It gives people something different to look at across a range of candidates, because there are some positions, for example, VP Union Development, which is one of the sort of bigger positions possibly, they're all just white male candidates, and it's a bit, I don't know, it's sort of, I think that's something some of the members of Lucy feel, okay, we can tackle that. And again, it's what some of the nominees feel they want to tackle.
It's interesting you say there we have among the home student population, we have a fairly white student population, but we do have a significant number of international students. And is the FTO nominations list and the lack of international students on there symbolic of a wider disengagement among international students? And if it is, do you think Lucy can do more to engage international students in politics?
I think international students are, like, there are quite a few students who say they aren't particularly engaged with the union, and international students are definitely the group which are probably leading the charge there. I think obviously you have a lot of difficult things when you are an international student, and you're speaking your second language and you're just getting used to your new surroundings and things like that.
And it could be a completely different political system.
Yeah, and getting used to something you're not necessarily used to in sort of student politics and things like that will be a jar. But there should be an element of reaching out, and there has been. But I think there could possibly be done more. But also there are some international nominees. There are at least sort of two who would definitely describe themselves as one running for president, as I'm sure you know, who will sort of definitely make a massive point of the fact they want to run and internationalise and treat that as a key policy issue.
Now, we're halfway through the first week of the 2 weeks of campaigning. What are we going to see from here on? And is there a particular good campaign, would you say?
You'll see a lot of postering and things like that. I think the traditional ideas of postering and things like that can often be done quite badly almost. If you just have like often the best posters are very simple. If you just have a massive picture of your face and your name, that often does a better trick than if you try and get everything in your massive investor on it, because no one's going to read size 12 print on a A4 on A4 poster in the spine, because people don't go around looking for posters when they're in university. Posters are there as almost like a subliminal thing, I think what definitely makes more of an impact in actually getting people's votes vote is going out there. For example, a lot of the campaigners, what they do is going around to societies and clubs and things like that, and that often makes more of an impact. Because if you met someone and you know what they're about and you can generally talk to them and raise any issues you do have, I think you're far more likely to vote for them than if you just see a quirky hashtag on a poster.
Yeah. And thank you very much for joining us anyway. We'll now be taking a look at a short clip for the LA1 show, and afterwards we'll be joined by Colin Mang, Chair of Union Council, to discuss the upcoming elections.
Hi and welcome to the LA1 show. I'm Claire.
And I'm Rob. There's been lots going on around campus recently. Second term has been very busy, and we've gone to see some of the things going on. We travelled all the way to the top of campus, to the Great Hall,
where the Culture Society has put on a show with performances from the cheerleaders, Lou Dance and many more.
In my opinion, it's the best way to end the Global Village Week.
Hi, we're here in the Great Hall with a member of the Lou Dance who has just performed in the Culture Society's show. How did that go for you?
It was really well, thank you. We performed our inter-ballet routine, which is one of our competition squad routines. We performed at Durham Dance Fusion in first term with that routine and placed second, so it was great to perform it again.
Yeah, did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was really good, really good.
I'm aware you've got a show coming up. How are the rehearsals going?
Rehearsal's going really well, thanks. We've been rehearsing since week 1 of this term, and we've got about 70 to 80 members of the society involved, doing 37 dances, so it's quite a lot, but really good. Lots of different styles, from your regular like ballet, tap, jazz, street, to Irish tap. We've got burlesque, so lots of variety, so something for everyone.
Which is your favourite?
Oh, that's a tough question. I'm in quite a few, so I'm not going to say. But our show is on Thursday, Friday and Saturday, which is the 5th, 6th and 7th of March in the Nottingham Theatre at 7:30. And you can book your tickets now from www.liveatleica.org.
Book your tickets now.
We're here with 2 people from the Cultural Society exec. And so, how did tonight's show go then?
Well, it was good. There was quite a number of people who attended, and they were greeted with some free food before the performance, and they sat through an hour of good performancing, basically.
Minor technical setbacks, but nothing big. The show went really smoothly, so we're really happy with how it turned out.
Oh, that's great. And do you know on average how long it took you to prepare for this show?
Well, it took some time. Basically, at least this whole term was spent to prepare for it, and all the previous exec meetings we've been primarily preparing for this event.
We started talking about this during the first term. We've prepared it, and there was quite a few meetings about it. The budget was actually a really hard part to organize, and
quite an expensive event, to be honest.
Yeah, the venue was quite expensive, but overall, the preparation went pretty smoothly. Definitely long and a lot of work, especially from the president. Props to her.
She was the hard worker.
Well, it's all paid off. Well, thank you very much for talking to us.
So, we've been all around campus, now we're back where we started after a great night.
And there's been a lot going on around campus recently, and there's going to be even more going on towards the end of this term.
Make sure you watch our next episode, which is going to be a Campus Fest special.
Yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for joining us, Colin. Now, as we heard in the news headlines, one of the issues that has been talked about a lot recently is accommodation, and the fact that City Block are building more accommodation in town, but there is a lack of affordable accommodation both on campus and in town, and that students are paying a premium above non-students in Lancaster for accommodation. Now, as Union Council Chair, you've obviously been at all Union Councils. What has been said at Council about cost of living?
It's been a big issue really since last year. Winter officer training in 2014, so going back a little over a year, the union made cost of living a priority. So all of the officers from all the JCRs, all the cross-campus officers and full-time officers voted on what our priorities should be for the coming year, and cost of living really came out as being the major issue to focus on. I'm not surprised in the upcoming election a number of candidates have focused on that. We've had a range of discussions, particularly recently, given that the university has decided to increase your rents on campus by 2.5%. Right now, I can't talk too much about how we're moving to fight that, because a lot of it's still in negotiation. Some of the full-time officers are still working on how to do that, but it has been a very serious issue for the past year. Given that, essentially what we're seeing is the cost of living rising 15 to 20% for students over the past 5 years, even though your maintenance loans have really not increased with inflation. Maintenance loans have increased by only about 10% over the last 5 years, which just barely covers inflation, whereas living costs have increased over 20%.
So Henry, you were talking earlier to us about figures that have been released around the country about the difference between student and non-student rent prices.
Yeah.
And Lancaster comes out particularly badly in this. Do you just want to run us through?
Yeah, a recent Stu Rent survey, they found out basically, they were looking at how much non-students pay compared to students in similar sort of accommodation. And Lancaster was, I think it was about 7th worst of all the places in Britain looked at, because students on average pay about 19% more than non-students. So roughly it's about, we'd pay about 84 pounds per person per week in the same sort of accommodation, where someone would spend about 65 pounds. And which, so we are, that is quite a lot of money when you think about it in terms of, on average, that adds up over, take a 40-week lease, about £19 does add up to about sort of 800 quid compared to your average person. So it's about £2,500 over a 3-year university degree, which is an awful lot of money. So you do have to wonder whether or not it is fair, the amount people are having to pay. It's relatively sort of similar, however, to what people are paying in other university areas for student accommodation. The issue is non-student accommodation varies so much, but why should student accommodation be the same across the board, whether you live in Bath, Reading, Bristol or Lancaster?
So the difference isn't between universities, really. It's the local housing market affecting this, and with the fluctuations in the local housing market, they're not being represented in the student accommodation.
Yeah. As you mentioned there, the main issue is what it is in certain areas. For example, the place where it was described as having the most expensive accommodation was Loughborough, because the average sort of non-student housing was £56, whereas the student housing similar was £80. And whereas the sort of place we were saying was the cheapest was Reading, whereas actually their accommodation was also £80. It just happens to be that the average was £136. So there was a difference of sort of more than £75 between the two normal prices, yet for students it was exactly the same, which doesn't make any sense at all in sort of basic maths. So it does show, is there an element of a sort of almost prejudice within these sort of companies that are selling accommodation, or is it just a general idea that they're all competing wherever they are and all competing across the board?
Is this partly due to national companies being involved in the student housing market?
Yeah, possibly, and often as well, that's the thing, you often see a difference in price. If you notice in Lancaster quite a bit between private owners and much larger companies who often they say they sort of offer more things, such as they fix things and other sort of deals, their package deals they do within it, but then it costs more, so they end up almost getting an element of monopoly of certain areas because they can afford to buy a lot, and then people want to come for certain aspects of it. So it's sort of bigger and bigger and get larger foundations, and you do see in Lancaster there are numerous sort of big, for example, City Block and Yellow Doors, sort of big letting agencies that do often make students pay some sort of premium.
Okay, let's move on to the hot topic of the moment. As usual for this time in second term, it is the full-time officer elections. We are we've been in campaigning for a few days now. Where do you think the candidates should be at in their campaigns?
I've been really impressed by some of the candidates. I've been disappointed in others. You see the number of posters out. I was out Monday morning, 9 a.m., seeing what was going on. And there were only 5 candidates who were actually out right at 9 a.m., and only 3 of them really had, big teams putting out posters for them. So there were a few folks who were making a really big push on the first day. Other folks are off to a bit of a slower start, but again, it's only been a couple of days, so you could see it pick up. Right now, I think what the candidates need to be doing is they need to be getting posters up, they need to be getting their name and face out there. They also need to be going around talking to the clubs and societies, just trying to meet people. The biggest thing you can do is meet people and put your message out there, hopefully convince them to vote for you.
Now, what are some of the key campaign ideas that we've seen so far?
Well, there's quite a number of them. It really depends on which position you look at.
Yeah.
So, in terms of looking at the presidential candidates, a lot of them are sort of focusing on the big picture. Cost of living campaign, internationalization on campus. Not really seeing too many local policy issues. There is one candidate who's put out an idea for buses. Sort of like a welfare bus. That'd be an interesting local thing. But those candidates are tending to focus on sort of bigger picture issues. From the education folks, not surprisingly, they're focusing on January exams. That's a big issue for them. They're also focusing on more active engagement, which is something the education team has really focused on this past year. So again, I'm not surprised with some of the messages that have been coming out from those candidates.
Have there been any sort of big messages that they've missed out for any certain roles?
There's, again, well, I mean, from the presidential candidates, I'd like to see, focus on more, specific promises rather than just big picture issues. I'd like to see something more specific from the candidates. I'm surprised with the education ones that they've not actually talked a lot about an off-campus study zone. This year, for postgraduate students, an off-campus study zone was opened. But I know it's something that a lot of undergrads would like, and it's something that none of the education candidates have actually mentioned. In terms of the activities candidates, I'm quite surprised none of them have really put a focus on grad ball, which is a major factor in what the activities do. They're all focusing on clubs, sports, societies. They're focusing on roses, which are big issues, but grad ball is still one of the major projects that activities has to do, and you're not really hearing a lot from those activities candidates on what they're going to do for grad ball. So I think that's something they're really missing out right now. In terms of campaigns and communications, I'm actually quite impressed with the candidates for that. A number of them have said they want to do more joint media work, and they've got a lot of sort of ideas on how to integrate Bailrig, LA1, SCAN into doing more joint coverage of events. So I'm actually quite pleased to see those candidates coming out with that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, are there any positions that you'd say have the strongest campaigns? Or candidates?
Strongest candidates so far, I'd say, were probably in union development. A number of the candidates there, I'm going to have a very difficult time trying to choose who I'd like in that one, because I can see a number of really strong candidates, especially after listening to their debate on Bailrig FM yesterday. I'd say that one has the most competition and the strongest set of candidates. They all have very detailed manifestos. They've got some great policies, and they're hitting all the major issues involved in that role. So, I mean, this is 4 guys who have done their homework and they know their stuff. I think that's going to be the most competitive race this year.
It's interesting that this year there are college presidents, and as last year, if we looked at the president race last year, there was comments that there's no sort of Lusu wonder kid running for it. They were all outside of the high politics of Lusu. Whereas this year we do have college presidents running for positions. We do have current FTOs rerunning for things. So do you think that makes it any more predictable, or that those candidates have an advantage?
Again, because they're also running against other well-known officers, I don't think it has an advantage. I do think if you've not been involved in the Students' Union before, it does put you at a bit of a disadvantage simply because people don't know your name. But you can overcome that by having a good poster campaign, by going around, meeting clubs and societies, getting out there. Obviously, experience is a big thing, and if you're planning to lead a team of other officers, it helps to have been an officer previously and know what it's like to be part of that team. But for candidates who've never been involved before, there's still lots of opportunity. I mean, our current president this year was never involved in the Students' Union before, had a lot of learning to do when she got into the role, but it's entirely possible for candidates to just think to themselves, yeah, this is something I'd like to do, put their name on the board. We're seeing that quite a bit in the activities race this time, where only one of the people in the activities race has been a cross-campus officer. One of them is a JCR officer, and then you have 3 other people from different clubs and societies coming in. And that's, again, it's a really open race. I'm liking some of the candidates in that one. Some of their campaigns are really well done so far. So that one could essentially go to anyone. I think being an officer gives you an advantage in terms of name recognition, but that's something that you can overcome if you're an inexperienced candidate with a really good campaign and really good ideas.
It's really interesting to see who comes through. Now, the campaigns are underway.
Yes.
What's the sort of development of the 2 weeks? How does it change throughout?
It's some people say it's a marathon, but really it's actually more of a 2-week-long sprint. You've got to be going as fast as you can for the entire 2 weeks. And it's really draining. I've been talking to a number of the candidates over the past 2 days, and they've already been telling me they're really tired. They're waking up in the morning. They're not wanting to go out there anymore. But they do because they know this is a job they really want. First day, postering, setting your campaign timelines, what you'd like to do. From now until Sunday at Hustings, you've just got to be out there meeting clubs and societies, getting your message out there. Sunday is Hustings, so you've got to be prepared. You've got to be on your game for that. LA1 is going to broadcast again?
Yep.
Yes, excellent. I mean, in past years, we've seen 800 to 1,000 views of the LA1 stream for that. So Hustings does reach about a third to a half of likely voters with that. So it's really important to have a good game for Hustings. And then in the final days leading up to the Wednesday vote, it's getting out in the square, it's meeting people, getting around to college events, going out and shaking people's hands, putting your message out there, handing out leaflets in the square right up until Wednesday when the vote starts. And then Wednesday, anything you can do to get votes. Have your friends sit on social media, say, vote for this, vote for this, vote for this. Just being out there. It's a 2-week-long sprint. You've got to go as fast as you possibly can. And by Friday, the second week, you're just going to want to go to bed.
How much does having an organised campaign team matter for this? Because I've been on a campaign team before, and I remember when I was on a campaign team, as soon as the candidate came out of the candidates meeting, which at 4:35 o'clock on Friday, the first day of campaign, which meant campaigns could start, there was 4 of us in position ready to put a banner up. There's someone on Facebook ready to launch the page. There was a couple of teams ready to put posters up as soon as the text went round, which is a sort of a military scale of operation.
Yeah.
How much is that going to advantage the candidates who can do that?
Yeah, that's interesting. In the past, campaigning used to start on Fridays immediately after the candidates meeting. The past couple of years, it started Monday morning, so you've had a few days to get your team prepared. Having a bigger team is definitely a major advantage. Getting your posters up, getting them in the best places on the first day. And again, I was kind of surprised. Last year when we saw the candidates out, I can think of at least 4 candidates on the first day who had teams of 20 people up, putting up stuff for them, going out, covering the campus. As well, every other candidate was out there right at 9 a.m. putting up all their stuff with whatever team they could get together. This year, it was quite shocking, really, to see only 3 candidates with teams helping them put up, and to see only 2 other candidates out there first thing Monday morning putting up their posters. Having a really solid team behind you makes all the difference because you can span out to more clubs and societies. You can get your message up. Poster replacement, poster maintenance is a surprisingly big thing because, as you know, people are coming home drunk from sugar on Wednesday night and they start ripping down posters just for fun. You've got to be out there every single morning replacing posters that get lost. And having a team behind you to do that is really critical.
I mean, you said there were less teams this year.
Yeah.
Do you think this reflects maybe a less competitive nature?
Well, I've been thinking about this because last year there were generally just 2 candidates for a lot of the positions, so you knew exactly who your main competitor was, and you knew that you had to do it better than they did. This year, because the candidates are running against 3 or 4 other people, perhaps they perceive that as in some ways being a bit less competitive. They're not sure who exactly is the front runner, who they're trying to compete against. And again, we have a lot of inexperienced candidates running for cross-campus positions, so you're not really knowing how to campaign. The people who I did see out with the large teams were folks who had run in previous cross-campus elections, or who I know had received support and advice from folks who had run in cross-campus elections before. So it may just be a bit of an inexperienced thing, not necessarily knowing how to run a cross-campus campaign.
Okay, well, thank you very much both for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'd also like to say good luck to all the candidates out there.
It's now time for the weather with Natasha and Sophie.
Good morning. Today in Lancaster there's going to be a high of 8 and a low of 7 with some slight rain.
Yes, and as we look on to the rest of the week in Lancaster, you can see it's still going to be super cloudy with some light rain. So for Wednesday it's sugar.
Yeah, remember those pound coins, guys, because you'll need them for the cloakroom.
Completely. As we look down to London, you can see that it's still going to be quite cloudy, so probably no point going home for this weekend to look for the sun. Hey, Natasha,
No.
we're going to have to be using that Saint-Tropez this week still, girls.
Unfortunately.
Brilliant. So back to you in the studio.
Now that's all we've got time for today, but here's a quick look at what's coming up on campus this week. Tonight is round 4 of Battle of the Bands in County.
And if you fancy more live music, then Pendle Live is on tomorrow evening.
Lonsdale's Pub to Club event is taking place on Friday evening.
And on Sunday at 11 p.m. till 4 p.m, the Lusu FTO hustings is taking place, as we've already said, down in Barkhouse Farm at Cartmel. We will be live streaming this, so either go down there to question the candidates or tune in to us to see how it goes.
And next Tuesday, Lonsdale is also hosting a FIFA tournament.
And finally, please remember to register to vote to have your say in the May general elections.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week with more Good Morning Lancaster.
Goodbye.
Bye.